The reluctant Guardian Commander Theron Blackwood stood motionless in the echoing hangar bay, attempting to maintain military composure while his mind raced with uncomfortable thoughts. The austere ceremony around him felt hollow. Banners hung too precisely. Officials smiled too mechanically, and the recycled air tasted of political convenience. Admiral Voss, a woman whose career was built on calculated decisions, approached with a datapad and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Commander Blackwood," she announced with practiced formality. "In recognition of your exceptional service during the Novari conflict and your pivotal role in the Battle of Helios Gate, the United Terran Alliance presents you with this commendation." Theron nodded stiffly, accepting the medal that felt heavier than its actual weight. But Admiral Voss wasn't finished. "Additionally," she continued, her voice taking on a ceremonial tone that made Theron instinctively tense, "as per the Treaty of Ascension, you are granted a token of our victory, a personal attendant from the Novari noble class." The hangar doors parted with a pneumatic hiss. The figure who entered moved with contained grace, each step deliberate and measured. She was tall and slender, with skin the color of pale amethyst and hair that cascaded down her back in waves of silver blue. Her most striking features were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and completely black except for flecks of silver that caught the light like distant stars. Elegant ridges framed her face, extending from her temples to her jawline in patterns that marked her lineage. "This is Lyra," Admiral Voss said, gesturing as if introducing a new piece of equipment. "Daughter of House Vexarin, educated in the highest Novari traditions. She is now yours to command as you see fit. Yours to command." The words turned Theron's stomach. He had fought for freedom, for defense of his people, not for ownership of another sentient being. "Admiral," Theron began cautiously, "I don't require—" Your objection is noted, Commander," Voss cut him off smoothly. "However, refusal would constitute a diplomatic incident. The treaty terms are quite clear." Lyra's eyes met his, unflinching, proud, and carrying something Theron immediately recognized: carefully controlled rage. "Does she understand our language?" Theron asked, refusing to discuss the Novari woman as if she weren't standing right there. "I understand 6 Terran dialects, 15 interplanetary trading languages, and can reproduce the mathematical equations that govern your primitive faster-than-light drives," Lyra responded in perfect unaccented standard. Her voice was melodic but sharp with barely concealed disdain. "Will there be anything else, Commander?" Admiral Voss's expression tightened. "As you can see, she's been thoroughly educated, though perhaps not in proper deference." "I prefer straightforward communication to deference," Theron replied, then turned to Lyra. "I assume you have belongings?" "Nothing that wasn't confiscated," she answered coolly. The transport shuttle that carried them to Theron's assigned quarters on Orbital Station Meridian maintained the uncomfortable silence between them. Theron kept glancing at Lyra, unsure what to say to someone who had been handed to him like a prize. She sat perfectly still, staring out the viewport at the stars with an intensity that suggested she was memorizing escape routes. "I didn't ask for this," Theron finally said. "No one consults the furniture about where it's placed," Lyra replied without looking at him. "You're not furniture. Not according to your Admiral Voss." When they reached his quarters, military standard, sparse and functional, Lyra surveyed the space with a quick assessing glance. "Minimalist," she observed. "Or perhaps just lacking imagination." "Military efficiency," Theron corrected, setting down his duffel. "Look, I don't know what they told you about your position, but I don't need a servant. I certainly don't want one." Lyra turned to face him fully for the first time. "What you want is irrelevant, Commander. What matters is what happens to me if you reject me. Do you know?" Theron frowned. "No. I would be reassigned to someone who sees me as less than sentient. Someone who would take full advantage of their rights under your treaty. Or worse, I would be sent to a labor colony where Novari attendants who fail to please their masters are disposed of." Her voice remained even, factual, as if discussing weather patterns. The realization hit Theron like a physical blow. He wasn't just being given a servant, he was being handed responsibility for a life. Rejection wasn't freedom, it was abandonment. "You can stay," he said finally, "but not as a servant." "Then as what?" "A guest, a roommate, whatever you want to call it." Lyra's expression revealed nothing, but one slender eyebrow arched slightly. "Your superiors won't approve." "My superiors gave me a medal today for destroying 3 Novari warships and killing everyone aboard them," Theron said quietly. "Their approval isn't something I particularly value at the moment." Something flickered across Lyra's face, surprise perhaps, or reevaluation. She moved to the window, where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness. "Your world is very blue," she observed. "Yours isn't? Novar has copper-based vegetation. Our seas are deep amber. Our skies are pale gold." For a moment, her mask of reserve slipped, revealing a flash of homesickness so profound, it was almost tangible. "I'm sorry," Theron said, meaning it. Lyra turned, surprise evident in her star-flecked eyes. "For what specifically? The conquest? The casualties? The cultural decimation?" "For all of it. I followed orders. I protected my people. But I never wanted this." "Yet here we are," Lyra said, the momentary vulnerability gone. She straightened her shoulders. "If I am to be your guest, what are your expectations?" "No expectations," Theron replied. "The bedroom is yours. I'll take the fold-out." "In the living area, Commander Theron," he corrected. "If we're roommates, we use names, not titles." "Theron," she repeated, testing the name. "This arrangement is highly irregular." "So is being given a person as a medal," he countered. "We'll figure it out." That night, lying on the uncomfortable, fold-out couch, Theron stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of Lyra moving in the bedroom. He had been trained for combat, for strategy, for survival, not for navigating the moral complexities of a post-war society that treated sentient beings as spoils. In the darkness, he made a silent promise. Whatever happened, he would ensure Lyra's dignity remained intact. It was the least he could do in a galaxy that seemed determined to strip it from her. On the other side of the wall, Lyra sat cross-legged on the bed, palm pressed against the cool surface of a small silver disc. She had managed to hide during her processing, a memory crystal containing the last remnants of her family's history. She whispered ancient Novari words into the darkness, a ritual prayer for those navigating treacherous waters. Neither of them knew it yet, but their unlikely coexistence would soon challenge the foundations of a fragile peace built on domination, rather than understanding. The first small seeds of change had already been planted in the sterile soil of orbital station Meridian. Defiance in small gestures. 3 weeks into their uneasy cohabitation, Theron awoke to find Lyra sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by the dismantled components of the quarter's environmental control system. Her long fingers moved with precise, elegant motions as she reassembled circuits with modifications that were definitely not military standard. "Should I be concerned that you're rewiring our life support?" Theron asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Lyra didn't look up. "Your environmental system is inefficient. It wastes approximately 23% of its energy maintaining a temperature that fluctuates unnecessarily. Most people just adjust the thermostat." "Most people accept mediocrity," she replied, connecting 2 components that Theron was fairly certain weren't meant to be connected. "I've calibrated it to maintain optimal conditions while reducing power consumption." Theron leaned against the wall, watching her work. "Where did you learn engineering?" "I was trained in multiple disciplines," Lyra said. "House Vexaran believes in comprehensive education." "Your family," Theron ventured carefully. "What happened to them?" Her hands stilled momentarily. "My parents were diplomatic representatives. They were on Ceres Station when your forces bombed it." Theron felt the weight of her words. "I'm sorry." "You keep apologizing for things you claim you had no control over," Lyra observed, resuming her work. "Is that a human trait or just yours?" "Probably just mine. My squadron commander used to say I had an overactive conscience." A liability in war, but necessary for peace, Theron countered. Lyra connected the final component and the system hummed to life, running more quietly than before. She stood with fluid grace, brushing invisible dust from her simple gray tunic, the only clothing she'd been allowed to keep. We should acquire you more clothes, Theron said, noticing how she wore the same few items in rotation. I am functional with what I have, she replied. It's not about function, it's about... He searched for the right word. Comfort, choice. Something subtle shifted in Lyra's expression. Choice is a luxury rarely extended to the conquered. Later, that day, Theron requisitioned access to the station's civilian marketplace. The area was designed to create the illusion of normalcy for long-term station residents. Shops and stalls arranged to mimic a planet-side commercial district, complete with simulated natural lighting. Lyra moved through the marketplace with cautious curiosity. Other Novari were occasionally visible, all in the company of Terran officers or officials, all wearing the same standardized gray tunics that marked their status. They kept their eyes lowered, their movements subdued. Lyra did not. She walked, with her head high, her posture regal despite her circumstances. Theron noticed the stares they attracted, some curious, some disapproving. People are watching, he murmured. People always watch what they fear, she replied quietly. At a clothing stall, Theron gestured to the available selections. Choose whatever you like. Lyra hesitated, then slowly moved her hand over the fabrics, fingers hovering just above without touching. She paused at a deep purple material with subtle iridescence. This resembles chroma silk from the Novari southern provinces, she said, her voice carefully neutral, though Theron caught the flicker of emotion in her eyes. We'll take several pieces in that fabric, Theron told the merchant, who looked between them with barely disguised curiosity. For your companion? The merchant asked, emphasizing the word uncomfortably. Yes, Theron replied firmly. For my friend. The word hung in the air between them as they walked back to their quarters, Lyra carrying packages of clothing she had selected with increasing confidence as their shopping progressed. Friend, she finally said, as the door closed behind them. An interesting designation. Would you prefer a different term? No, she said after a moment, though it will cause complications. I'm getting used to complications. The next morning, Lyra emerged from her room wearing a tunic of the purple chroma silk-like fabric. The color brought out the subtle luminescence of her skin, making the delicate ridges along her temples seem to glow. For the first time since her arrival, she looked fully herself, not a possession, but a person of dignity and presence. It suits you, Theron said simply. Something almost like a smile flickered across her face. Thank you. News of Commander Blackwood's unusual arrangement with his Novari attendant spread through the station with the efficiency of a well-designed virus. Senior officers started finding reasons to visit his department. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, Theron's direct superior, finally made the inevitable official visit to his quarters. Blackwood, Reeves said, eyes darting around the room and lingering on Lyra, who sat at the small desk, analyzing stellar cartography data. I understand you've been unorthodox in your handling of your Novari benefit. Benefit? Theron repeated. Carefully. Your assigned attendant, Reeves clarified, gesturing vaguely toward Lyra without looking directly at her. Her name is Lyra, Theron said. And yes, we found an arrangement that works for us. Reeves lowered his voice. There are concerns, Blackwood. The other Novari are noticing. Their handlers report increased restlessness, questions about privileges. Basic dignity isn't a privilege, Theron replied. Lyra, who had remained silent but clearly listening, stood and approached. Lieutenant Commander, she said with perfect composure, perhaps your concerns would be alleviated by understanding that Commander Blackwood simply recognized my potential usefulness beyond domestic tasks. My analysis of stellar phenomena has already improved navigation efficiency in Sector 7 by 12%. Reeves blinked, clearly unsettled by being addressed directly. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Theron asked. Order, Blackwood, structure. The treaty terms were designed to maintain specific power dynamics. Reeves straightened his uniform jacket. Just maintain appropriate appearances in public. That's all I'm saying. After he left, Lyra returned to her work without comment. You don't have to justify your existence with usefulness, Theron said quietly. In my experience, Lyra replied without looking up. All beings must justify their existence to those with power over them. I am simply adapting to circumstances. That night, when the station cycled into its artificial darkness, Theron found Lyra on the small observation deck attached to their quarters, gazing at the stars. You miss your world? He said. Not a question. I miss knowing my place in the universe, she replied. Not the place your people assigned me, my true place, my heritage, my culture, my future as I once imagined it. Theron moved to stand beside her. What would that future have been? I was to follow my parents into diplomatic service. I had been preparing since childhood. Her voice remained calm, but her hands tightened slightly on the railing. Instead, I am here, an object transferred from one owner to another. Not to me, Theron said firmly. Never to me. Lyra turned to look at him, her star-flecked eyes searching his face. Then what am I to you, Theron Blackwood? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was fully ready to address. Someone I'm still getting to know, he answered honestly. Someone I respect. A subtle shift in her expression, the barest softening around her eyes, was her only response. Together they stood in silence, watching the slow dance of stars beyond the viewport, each lost in thoughts of what was and what might be. As Lyra finally turned to retire for the night, she paused at the threshold. Thank you, she said softly, for seeing me. It was the first time she had thanked him for anything, and Theron understood the significance, not gratitude for provision or protection, but acknowledgement of recognition, of humanity recognized in a being from another world. In the quiet of the observation deck, long after Lyra had gone, Theron realized that the war might have ended with treaties and ceremonies, but true peace would only come through countless, small acts of defiance against the very system he had fought to uphold, and somehow, without planning it, he had taken his first steps into rebellion.